Hey, Crawl Spacers, welcome to our Spider History with JR. JR, what's going on, sir?
Oh, I tell you, boys and girls, we've got a fantastic couple of months coming up here in
There you
Spider
go.
history.
We've also got George. What's going on, George?
Hey,
Yo, so we are headed back to 1989, is that right?
Oh, yes, indeed.
Todd
1989.
McFarlane, very much the hottest thing in comics, right?
That's right.
Look at that, ASM 314. So this is April of 1989.
Yes, and of course, being with the unusual monthly how they did the things or whatever. This actually came out around Christmas time. Hence, it is a Christmas issue with an April cover date.
What, if I remember correctly, what they did was they put, this is how long they can stay on the spinner rack or the bookshelves, 3 months. And so by April, you got to pull it off. If I remember correctly. Am I wrong? I don't. That's what I've heard.
I genuinely don't know.
I've never heard that. I
never
always
heard that?
don't know.
But anyway, yeah, this came out in December. We just do what the month says on the cover. So Spider-Man's under some mistletoe in the corner box too. So take me through this one, JR. ASM 314.
All right. The first page begins actually being rather true to the cover, which many comics aren't true to their covers. Where Spider-Man and where Peter Parker and Mary Jane are getting receiving their formal eviction notice on their deluxe apartment in the Sky Bedford Towers condominium by Jonathan Caesar's lawyer. Because you remember Jonathan Caesar, of course. He's the mogul who owned these condos and sold them, and sold this one to Mary Jane. And he obviously was obsessed with Mary Jane, having kidnapped her a few issues earlier. And now that his plan to control her and own her has failed, he's going to exact his revenge from jail. And this is going to begin by evicting the Parkers from their home.
Right.
Now, I guess I won't tie myself in knots over the legality of what's actually going on. That supposedly when Mary Jane bought the condo, it was a non-binding contract. I don't know what that means. And that all of her savings were invested in that condo and she won't be able to get to them without going through litigation. So basically, Mary Jane is broke and Peter is broke. And Mary Jane has to save the creepy, ugly McFarlane-esque lawyer, because everyone that McFarlane draws pretty well is ugly. He has to, Mary Jane has to save him from Peter grinding him into silly putty. But you know, Aunt May happens to be there, you know.
Look at how thick Peter's eyebrows are there.
Yeah, like I said, Ben Shapiro eyebrows. Holy cow, you know.
Say Aunt May's there. Look at Aunt May giving them this side eye.
Giving them the evil eye. I tell you, yeah. When an 80-year-old woman, 72, I guess she's 72, according to
she gets younger. She's
Marvel
the
Knights.
Benjamin Buttons of Marvel.
She's going to give him Xanax cookies.
So, but she offers Peter and Mary Jane, she says, well, of course you can stay home or you can come back and live with me. And of course, Peter says, no, you know, Peter's ego shifting into gear before his brain does. No, Mary Jane and I have already got another place to live, you know. And of course, Mary Jane can't wait to figure out what this is going to be. So anyway, the scene shifts to a department store where it's mogul, whose name is all too on the nose, Howell Thurston III.
Oh, wow. From
Gilligan's
Island.
And he doesn't look anything remotely like Jim Backus. So he's the cliched. And again, this is just a one issue, you know, holiday story, you know, so don't expect a whole lot. But, you know, he's a typical.
Respect that beard, though.
Yeah, that's a good looking beard, isn't it?
Yeah, that's almost like
I thought this was Dr. Faustus.
I was about to say it's almost a Dr. Faustus beard.
Yeah.
So he's a typical Scrooge-like business owner here, and
Mhm.
because his stores had a big weekend because it's Christmas, but the banks are all closed, and now he's just sitting on all this money that he
Yeah.
doesn't know what to do with. So he's got to hire a private security firm to go take it to a vault somewhere. Gripe, 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 gripe.
Yeah.
Whereas, but at least his faithful clerk, his Mr. Bernstein like clerk, is there, working overtime on Christmas without any bonus. But the shifty little clerk, he's got some plans too, as noted by the handgun that is currently in his briefcase.
You get bonus points for me for the Mr. Bernstein reference.
Yes, he does look up. He does kind of look like a mousy little Mr. Bernstein. Yes,
You're getting paid, Mister, for opinions or for hauling.
that was one of the. I still contend one of the greatest American movies of all time. So,
It is.
but so anyway, while out for a walk, Peter has to explain to Mary Jane that his big fat ego resulted in him lying to Aunt May.
No.
What kind of disgusting human being, lying to Aunt May because he feels too humiliated to go back and live at home. Plus, he knows that May, being a bit old bitty busybody, can't keep her nose out of his business, particularly when there's web slinging heroics to perform.
Right.
And because in addition to his humiliation, there is his craven cowardice about never being honest with May about him being Spider-Man, because he doesn't have the balls to tell her.
Jeez.
Anyway,
This is one time when I was down on Peter, because I remember reading that and I was like,
Mhm.
dude, it's one thing if it's just you and you can like web a pillow up in a tree and a web blanket or whatever. You have a wife.
Right. Responsibility.
Yeah, it's not just you anymore, dude.
yeah,
Mhm.
and that's pretty well how I felt times 10 with Civil War when,
Mhm.
Peter said, "Oh, I'm going to be inspired by Captain America giving me this speech, and I'm going to make my wife and my 70-something-year-old mother figure go
Targets. Yeah.
So anyway, while Peter's feeling sorry for himself and doing all this, Mary Jane says, "Hey, look, there's a mugging." And Peter said, screw that guy. I'm going to pull a Tobey Maguire in Spider-Man 2, and I'm just going to ignore it. But
No,
then,
he's not.
but he comes to his senses, of course, because he's Spider-Man, and he captures the mugger and returns the money to the typically ugly McFarlane-esque person.
Hold on. This is an iconic McFarlane pose. Look at that thing. My God.
I like Todd McFarlane as an artist overall, but I hated stuff like this in the comics because it was too busy.
Oh, I don't know. This is a post. This is a poster.
Darn spaghetti webbing.
Yeah,
Oh,
the
that's
bulky
beautiful.
spaghetti webbing. Oh, I never really did like it.
Oh,
And
I did.
It always just sort of took away. It was very distracting whenever I
Tom
looked at the art.
DeFalco didn't like the spaghetti webbing.
Yep.
So,
Oh, look at that. Look how cool that looks where he got the crook with the web. Oh, that's so cool.
yeah, this is
Oh, look at
Adrian
that.
Toombs. Adrian Toombs' younger brother.
Oh, that's beautiful.
So,
my God.
Derek Toombs.
yeah, there we go. So Spider-Man, gives the a purse back to the ugly woman, who then gives him a present of homemade macaroons. All right.
With
So
Felix the cat on the box. Yeah.
So Peter mentally runs through the people he could consider asking him and Mary Jane to stay with, including Liz and Harry. But, they have relatives over. And in desperation, Peter asks Flash, who apparently has a room at a gym that he owns, and he offers that to Peter and Mary Jane. And Peter readily accepts. Flash, Flash, you're a real friend. Of course, this is a far different Flash Thompson than appears in the Mackie Byrne era, where Flash is saying, "Yeah, Peter, I don't know why all these hot women have always liked you, and and everybody dies around you. What a loser you are." So I don't know. That must have been a Flash clone or something, because this Flash is actually pretty friendly and helpful. So anyway, so we had a detour earlier in the story where the Mr. Bernstein clerk was obviously up to something. Well, we find out what he was up to. All these guys, the clerk hire the security firm. He hired these goons to replace the real security guards, and so they're going to steal all this this whole truck full of money from the stingy department store mogul. So Well, so he conducts his own stick up. Anyway, so Peter, though, at the very same time, Peter is at the cemetery at Uncle Ben's grave feeling sorry for himself. Oh, I can't move in with Aunt May because she leaves all of her old lady garments drying on a clothesline in the living room, and the whole house smells like Paula Denton hemorrhoid cream. I can't move back there, Uncle Ben. But then, just then, the crooks decide to drive through the cemetery, to avoid all the traffic. So they decide to drive through the cemetery. Well, of course, Peter changes to Spider-Man, easily dispatches the goons because after all, this is only a one-issue story. And the dime store Santa, who they took hostage, clubs the Mr. Bernstein-like crook. Spidey changes back to Peter Parker, goes back to Ben's grave, only to see Aunt May there. And then Peter realizes, oh, what a selfish twat I am.
Wow.
Whoa,
Wow.
man.
Yeah, don't mess with Santa on Christmas,
Yeah.
So Peter says, I've been a selfish little twat. You know what? It would just give Aunt May a lot of joy.
JR,
What?
let's not use that word. My goodness. Okay.
Well, what word do you want me to use? I'm trying to see
Jackass.
Jackass. Yeah.
Idiot.
Been an idiot. Yeah, that's a good one.
Anyway, so Peter realizes what a selfish turd he has been.
Much better than the other word.
Yeah,
yes.
no doubt.
And
Even Spider-Man's disappointed with that word right there in that panel.
and that the old bat would probably actually like to help Peter and MJ out, so he has to move back in. And the final page is we go to the Parker house where a Christmas party is going on. Peter and Mary Jane decide to get all sucky face. And then May reminds them that the mistletoe is in the other room. But Peter tells May, we know, but the love is in here.
Yeah.
Next issue, Venom. And after that schmaltzy panel, thank God we could use a little brain eating action after that one. All the love is in here.
This is an awkward panel. Let me get dressed in the cemetery before Aunt May sees me.
Yeah, and exactly what's he doing with his is he like putting himself in place or something? He's like, kind of
My goodness.
before I zip my pants up, because I don't want to catch anything on the zipper,
Did you not like this story?
Oh, it was okay. It was fine. No, you're picking it up. It's a little Christmas issue. It's a one and done. It's inoffensive. There's really nothing wrong with it other than Peter goes through a period of acting like a douchebag, but we're kind of used to that with Peter Parker sometimes.
Yeah. He has his douche periods.
That's true.
His ego does get in the way.
Matt says, JR, you're one of a kind.
Bobby, thank you.
We saw Christy at that party. Yes, we did.
We did.
We did. Yeah, we're surprised Christy didn't wave the mistletoe in front of Peter because she had a thing for Peter. Oh, she had a thing for Peter at one time. Yes,
Didymus says too many artists made Spidey stiff and muscular. That's what made McFarlane's art great. I would agree. Matt says Spider-Man Christmas issues are usually good. Most of them, I think so. Yeah,
I know that there's a great one. One of my favorite Spider-Man Christmas story involves one of the greatest villains of all time.
Bob says, when I was younger, I really liked Todd McFarlane, but now I'm a fan of John Romita Jr., who is coming back to Marvel.
Yep.
Yeah.
I thought, George, you were going to say your favorite Christmas issue was the one where Johnny and Spidey in the flying tub saved Misty Knight. But no, that is...
Toby says
it was the Stegron meat gun fight.
Because McFarlane was the artist when I started reading. He can do no wrong in my eyes. I would love nothing more than to have him do Spider-Man just one more time. Toby, I'm kind of with you, man. I love McFarlane stuff in the 90s. I was all in, and I can't kind of like Amazing Friends. I can't look at McFarlane stuff and criticize it when it comes to Spider-Man because I love it so much.
I can.
I know you two can. You guys are bitter old men, but
particularly because when I went back and rebuilt my back issue collection, I had to pay more for the McFarlane issues. So I found that to be grossly unfair.
That's true. All right, you want to do Spec or Web? I got Web up. If you want to do that.
Okay. Let's go ahead and do Web up. I had Spec next, but that's fine.
Web.
Doesn't matter.
That's a Charles Vest cover, I think. Who did Web #1?
I love Charles Vest. Always, every time I hear his name, I think of that Hobgoblin Spider-Man poster or fold out
Mhm.
I think it's I think it might have been web number 1. It was a fold out or gatefold or something like that.
Yeah, it's pretty.
And then they made it. I think they turned it into a poster later. That was beautiful.
Yeah. So, what happens? This is a fill-in issue because Alex Savik's not on it.
Well, it's sort of it's a fill-in issue, but Peter David is the writer.
Yeah.
Which unfortunately, though, when you look at the cover and then you look at the front page, you know that this is going to be a story about something important. So remember that, boys and girls.
Oh, it's
All right.
like a NBC special.
So pay attention, you slack-jawed troglodytes. All right.
Yeah.
So page 1 begins with a drug dealer on a street corner flipping a coin.
Yeah.
Because that's what they do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, after all, every time you saw Jerry Orbach bust a drug dealer on Law and Order, they were flipping a coin, of course.
Yeah.
You know, so anyway, because you know this is going to be an important story about drugs. All right.
Yeah.
So a young boy tries to buy drugs from Winston, which is the drug dealer's name. All right. And our hero, no, wait, this is just Spider-Man because our hero is Norman Osborn. But anyway, so the kid says, you know, so Spider-Man's ready to drop down and just, you know, crack this drug dealer, and the kid goes, "Oh no, Spider-Man, don't beat him. I need him." You know, Spider-Man knows, well, if I turn this guy in, he's just gonna, you know, get let out in a day. So I'll just take all his stash and throw it to the wind.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and he tells, "All right, Winston, I want you to leave town by sundown." And then the kid whines, "Oh, Spider-Man, I was going to buy drugs from him." And Spider-Man says, "Get out of here, you little schlump, and go find a shrink or something."
Check out
All
this
right.
movie he does with the crook. Look at this. Spins him around the light post. It's crazy.
Yeah, and now, like, does he, and like, obviously the guy takes a pee during the time because, as you can see, he whizzes.
Okay.
So, anyway, you know, that's, you know, another omnibopia brought to you by Dark
Right.
Mark.
One of the
Whatever that word
hallmarks
is.
of quality of
A whiz.
spider history.
Yeah.
Yep. So anyway, so we find out actually that Spider-Man kind of has this mat on for Winston the drug dealer because we're going to have a flashback. All right, flashback, where because Mary Jane happens to have a modeling friend that we've never heard of before, obviously, before the story. Her name's Lorraine, and we see in the story that Mary Jane runs into Lorraine just as Lorraine is obviously buying drugs from Winston, but of course we don't know that yet. All right. So MJ, being a little misfriendly, just invites herself right up to Lorraine's apartment for some girl talk. But then Lorraine has to go excuse herself to go to the bathroom and throw up. Of course, you know, Mary Jane goes in to help her and realizes that she's a dope fiend.
No.
All right. You know, and the girl won't go to the hospital, so MJ calls Peter for help, you know. And so, you know, Peter, you know, comes and says, "Oh, what can I do?" You know, and Mary Jane says, see that guy standing on the corner? That's a drug dealer. I want you to go and kick his ass. All right. And, you know, and, you know, Peter says, "Why don't we just go to call the cops?" You know, and MJ says, "You're Spider-Man, you little wimp. Go out there and kick his ass."
That's not what she says.
They're making shit up.
Now, wait, what is the line? Spider history as it unfolded without bias.
You're even lying in your name tag.
So
How
anyway,
far you've fallen, J.R. Fettinger?
Peter agrees, but first he sells Kate Cushing, who's the publisher of the Bugle now, because Jonah is trying to get Now Magazine going again.
Yeah.
He says, hey, Kate, what if I like take a whole bunch of pictures, follow this drug dealer around, you know, and we'll have this big old super photo exclusive, you know, I'll get pictures of everybody he buys from, everybody he sells to, and you know, and she says, oh, that's Peter, that's dangerous, you could get beat up, you could get killed. Go do it. All right. So, you know, which actually pretty well is what happened. She says, Peter, you can get hurt or killed. Go for it.
Go for it. Spider friends.
So anyway, but meanwhile, MJ is trying to get her friend into a rehab facility without much luck because we're saying something important here. All right. So Spidey puts a tracer in Winston's hair, of all places, because remember, boys and girls, this is 1989. In the 1980s, everybody except two of the three panelists here had big hair. and therefore you could easily hide a spider tracer in big hair. So Spidey is following Winston around and stealing his stash, but the supplier keeps, Winston keeps calling for help, and the supplier keeps pointing Winston to more stash, but then warns Winston, don't lead Spider-Man here or I'll kill you. All right, so MJ and Lorraine, because we are trying to find out there's a 6-month wait for Lorraine to get into a public rehab facility. And a private facility is going to cost $50,000 a year because the program will last 18 months. And Lorraine doesn't have health insurance because she let it lapse so she could use it for money for drugs. Okay, so I don't know. I don't know how things are in the state of New York, but I have it on good authority that in the state of Ohio, it does not take 6 months to get into a public rehab facility. But again, that's just me. So, anyway, but then again, I'm not saying something important here like this story is. So Spider-Man keeps following Winston, follows Winston to a facility in New York's warehouse district where they're cooking up some cool stuff. But of course, Winston's supplier, he warned him, not too happy to see Winston show up because he knows Spidey's following him. So he pumps him full of lead. Okay. So anyway, Spidey busts in and takes everybody down. And as Winston dies, he asks Spidey, why'd you pick on me, Spider-Man? And Spidey says, because of what you did to Lorraine. And Winston goes, who's Lorraine? All right. So Peter finds MJ, who tells
the dude dies, and Peter's like, you know what? I need to take more pictures. Jeez.
Yeah, all part of the story, getting the story. So Peter finds MJ, who tells him that Lorraine snuck out and bought drugs from another dealer while Spidey was out chasing Winston. Lorraine OD'd. Her chances of survival aren't good. Last page, Mary Jane says, Peter, the fight is just pointless. And Peter says, it's not pointless, but it's a long, long fight that you have to win one street corner at a time.
Yeah.
And as they leave, we see a taxi cab pull up to the corner. Another drug dealer comes out, leans against a lamppost, starts flipping the
coin. He bookended it.
So Mary Jane is indeed correct. It is pointless.
Yeah.
And considering that this story is 31 years old now, the point was pretty well. MJ is still right. I have mixed feelings about these social justice stories. I understand kind of, the desire of the writers to show how ineffective, even superheroes are against, deep-seated social problems. But I don't know. To me, it almost seems pointless. It says, okay, you told the story, you said something important. 31 years later, the problem's still the same. So what did it accomplish? So, but anyway, that's just me.
Real quick, we got some comments. Jeff says, LOL, the Gospel of JR, the most accurate account of Spidey's history.
Bless you, my son. Bless you. Bless you.
Oh,
Warner 6 says, no health insurance. They need some cardiac.
Wait until next month.
Oh, there you go. Cardiac. Andre says, JR can be quite scary sometimes.
Sometimes.
Yeah. Hornacek says, so this issue introduced a friend
that a mother could love.
This introduced a friend of Mary Jane and immediately killed her off. Yes, Hornacek, that's what happened. Matt says, this has been a after-school special, Spider history style. Let's see. What about that drug dealer? Andre says, somebody call the Punisher.
Well, old Punny didn't need to show up. The guy was done in by his own boss. So Punisher can save the lead for somebody else.
Hornacek says, so the motto of this issue is, can't win? Don't try. And this was written by Peter David, a young Peter David. He was still on the Hulk, though, at this time. So, yeah. All right. Let's see here. What issue are we doing next? We're doing
Spectacular 149.
Did I close the tab incorrectly? I did. Let me see if I can go back to it.
You had one job, Brad.
There it is. There it is. I found the tab. I got all these tabs open for Maximum Carnage that are for next month. I'm preparing 30 days in advance for.
I'm predicting I'm going to be sick before next month.
Have you ever been on an episode where we talk about Carnage, George?
I've been on episodes when we talk about Carnage. When remember you and I the satellites just used to be me and you.
Yeah.
And you would buy those god awful crappy Carnage comics and then like go through the entire thing, and I'd be sitting there like praying for death.
All right, so the next issue, the last one of this month, is Spec 149. We got Carry On My Wayward Son, Miles Warren's clone, huh?
Oh, no.
Oh, it's not. Okay.
No, in fact, that's the point of the issue.
Yeah.
That it's not.
Real quick, Toby's Z says, I want JR to do books on tape like novels and things. Toby, do not put that in the universe. He might do it. All right, so what happens in this issue, JR?
Well, okay. First of all, this issue was we got to do the
creative team.
Yeah, because I mean, one, you always got to put in a plug for your pal Sal,
Jerry Conway and Sal Buscema, writing and art.
Yes, indeed. All right. So the story begins with the Kingpin's goons. All right, dropping off the cash from the day's take. They went around the city, kind of like Mike. I think like Mike would do, for Bryan Cranston, so anyway, so they've got the take, and they're going to drop it off at the vault at Fisk Tower. But that's going to be they're not going to be able to make their deposit because a werewolf comes by and kills them all. And he leaves a message to the Kingpin written in blood. Kingpin, the wolves come for you. Of course, this is all part of the Lobo Brothers subplot that ran through Spectacular and I guess Web too at this time, because I think Conway was writing both Spectacular and Web. He didn't write. He didn't write the Web this month, but I thought he was writing Web and Spider-Man or Spectacular at the same time.
He did for a couple years, I think, and then he went over to do Law and Order. If I remember correctly.
And he made much more money.
Much more money. Yeah.
The Lobo Brother stuff was interesting because it pulled Glory into it as well.
It did. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we will mention Glory here in just a few pages.
Good. I like Glory.
Here, before we get there, we got some more comments. We got Andre wants to know when can the Spider Historians make a Spider History Live? I guess he wants us to do a show.
This is live.
This is live.
We're doing one now.
We're doing one live.
This is Spider History Live. Right
Toby
now?
would buy JR Reads the Bible.
I would have a lot of fun with the Book of Exodus, the early part, not the books of the law.
Gary in the Frozen says Sal Buscema versus Todd McFarlane. I prefer Sal.
I do as well.
That's a hard one for me.
It's an easy one for me.
Hornacek says it can't be a coincidence that this was issue 149. Conway's last issue of the 70s Clone Saga was ASM 149.
Ooh, Hornacek. I didn't even make that connection. Oh my gosh. Maybe Hornacek should be sitting in this position, in this chair.
All right. So we joined Peter Parker in class, huh?
All right. Yes. Peter Parker is back in grad school. All
where
right.
He still is today.
Where he is, and he's not paying any more attention than he did the first go.
30 years later, still in school.
So anyway, so Peter, he's sitting there pondering the fallout of the events of Spectacular Spider-Man Annual number 8. Because as you recall in that issue, Peter found out from the High Evolutionary that the Gwen Stacy clone from the first Clone Saga wasn't really a clone. That Miles Warren had kidnapped a girl by the name of Joyce Delaney and injected some of Gwen's genetic material into her, making her look like Gwen.
Can we call that a Gwen injection?
I thought that was like when Peter asked her on a date and she said no. I thought that's what that was.
That was a Gwen rejection.
And then if no, because JMS said that Gwen and Peter never had sex, so we couldn't have had the Gwen whatever. Anyway, okay, so But then again, we know now, all these years later, that the High Evolutionary was lying back then.
Yeah.
Okay? Because she really was a clone of Glenn. And that Miles Warren was really a student of the High Evolutionary. But that's another story. But we'll touch on that again later. But the annual really was nothing more than a stupid-ass overlong promo for the Young Gods. Another worthless idea that someone at Marvel tried to make happen. And there have been a lot of them.
Yeah.
Anyway. So Peter's sitting there wondering, well, if Gwen wasn't a clone, then who was carrying? If not a clone of Miles Warren, which is what we thought. Well, we've been setting the stage, for a rivalry between Peter and this other student named Malcolm McBride, all right, who is jealous of Peter because he and Peter were up for a research grant and Peter got it. And so, so Malcolm is just jealous and bitter. And like he says, you're not a campus superstar anymore, old man. So, of course, he's a douche. And he deserves what happens to him. So Peter decides to, take this opportunity to sneak into the college lab's basement because that's where Miles Warren did all of his experiments.
Right.
And of course, the place has been there untouched for at least 100 issues because we saw Carrion, or last saw Carrion, I think, in Spectacular Spider-Man number 31, which is over 100 issues ago. Yeah. So he goes down there and he wants to, he figures there's got to be something down here to explain what the problem is. And well, it just so happens that Malcolm McBride is following him. All right, because he wants to find evidence that Peter is not a serious student and get his grant pulled. Well, whatever, float your boat, Malcolm, you douchebag. And of course, Peter does not, for somebody who always knows, because of his spider sense, always knows when someone is following him, he does not notice that this guy is following him.
No spider sense. Or F's given.
But what his spider sense does warn him of is like, oh, I think there's something under this random stone here. So he pulls up the stone and he finds a book. Oh, look, it's Miles Warren's research journal. Wow, I am so glad to have this that I just happened to overlook the vial of green glowing goo that was right next to the journal because I just can't wait to read Miles Warren's diary. All right.
Oh yeah, the goo. Okay, I got you. Yeah.
So, anyway, so he puts the stone back, and Malcolm McBride follows. Goes down there and pries open the stone, and he is the one to find the green glowing goo. So the guy with the spider sense, of course, doesn't find the green glowing goo, but this idiot finds it. So I don't know what that says about Peter's concentration these days. All right, now considering that this is Jerry Conway writing this, and Jerry Conway has a number of subplots going on. Okay, we are introduced to one here, which is the trial of Joe Robertson, which didn't make sense from day one. Never made any sense, because the whole idea was that Robbie and Tombstone knew each other as young men. Robbie was a reporter, saw Tombstone kill a man, but didn't tell anybody because he was literally scared to death of Tombstone. But I guess that makes it a felony decades later.
You have complained about that story for years, and 30 years later, it's still being touched on in the current issues of Amazing now.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Tombstone and the Robbie relationship.
Yep. And of course, Conway always had a weird. Well, no, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Not in the slightest.
Yeah.
So that one that Robbie would even be on trial, much less go to jail for it, wouldn't happen. But anyway, so Tombstone now is on the stand, and the lawyer says, well, Joe Robertson says because he was afraid of you. And Tombstone said, well, if I wanted to kill Robbie, he'd be dead, but I wouldn't kill him because he's my friend.
Wait, go back one panel, Brad.
Yeah.
Tombstone looks like Johnny Carson in A Bad Day right there.
Ed McMahon and Johnny Carson right here, and Doc Severinsen as the judge.
That judge looks nothing like Doc Severinsen.
I know.
At all.
So,
Not
but
even-
anyway, Tombstone gets to be creepy, saying, I wouldn't hurt Robbie. He's my friend. Okay. And I never did. I never understood that. But anyway, so we have that. So we have another subplot getting back to, we have Glory Grant skipping and singing around the Daily Bugle, singing from probably The Sound of Music, blah, 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 because she's in love with Eduardo Lobo. And she tells Kate Cushion that's who it is, Eduardo Lobo. And Kate is thinking, oh my gosh, how can I tell her, she doesn't know. How can I tell her that the man she loves is a known criminal?
No.
But obviously, Glory doesn't know it. So is he a known criminal or not? I don't know. So considering too that Glory hangs around and works for a newspaper. So
yeah.
Okay. Whatever.
And at this point she was Jameson's secretary, right?
I think so, yes. Still
'cause
Jameson's.
Betty Brant was a reporter. Yep.
Well, Betty Brant is off with, I don't know, doing crazy stuff because Betty Brant is a bad person.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
But Glory replaced Betty after Amazing issue 160 or something like that. So it's been James's secretary. So anyway, so she's been around the newsroom, hangs around the newsroom quite a bit for obvious reasons, and doesn't know that Eduardo Lobo is a known criminal, but Kate Cushing does. But
and Glory is like the number 2 person at the Bugle now. That Robbie's the editor in chief.
Yeah. So anyway, so we go back to Malcolm McBride, who does what any enterprising college student would if he found a vial of growing green goo. He takes it back to his dorm room. And even though he has openly stated this is a virus, he opens it up. And he exposes it to the open air with even less safety protocols than a Chinese wet market in late 2019 and early 2020. So,
oh Lord. So it gets in his nose. It looks like.
Needless to say, when the glowing green goo attacks Malcolm, he gets exactly what he deserves. End of interlude.
Yeah.
So we go back to Peter Parker, and he is home with Mary Jane reading Miles Warren's journal. And he says, Miles Warren lied to me. And Mary Jane says, really?
Mary Jane's the readers at this point.
It's like, gee, Peter, are you the only idiot who didn't realize that these psychotic supervillains that you fight also lie?
Yeah.
But anyway, so Peter finds out that
totally like a wife thing to say. I think it's funny.
Well, it is. It's like,
Yeah, that's funny.
It's like Miles Warren lied to me. Oh, you mean the guy who dressed up as a supervillain and cloned Gwen and cloned you, that he was a little less than truthful. When did you get that hint, Peter?
Right.
But anyway, what he's upset about is that he finds out that, Miles Warren said that he felt fatherly towards Gwen. Well, by reading this journal, we find out that Miles Warren didn't just feel fatherly towards Gwen.
No.
He was in love with her. He wanted her. He drooled uncontrollably in her presence. And he had to excuse himself multiple times during classes to go to the bathroom.
Oh, stop that.
What? Oh. Anyway, and he hates Peter Parker.
Yeah.
And he wants to kill Peter Parker because Peter knew her love that should have been Miles Warren's. Well, I don't know if you check in about 400 issues later, J. Michael Straczynski says that Peter didn't know Gwen's love whatsoever. But then again, that's nothing, that's not for a few hundred issues. So anyway, and then Gwen dies at the hands of the Green Goblin and Spider-Man. Okay, because even though the Green Goblin kidnapped Gwen, even though the Green Goblin was the one who flew her to the bridge, And even though the Green Goblin, who's the one who threw her off the bridge, it's still Spider-Man's fault.
Warren
And
Six says
so-
Warren's journal reads like a Dear Penthouse forum.
Well, yeah. Hang on, that's true. Because and as Miles Warren is an early recipient of the Eddie Brock Award for misplaced blame. All right.
Nice.
So anyway, so
Nice.
in Miles Warren, and of course Peter's continuing to read Miles Warren's diary, and Warren is talking about how he just happens to follow Peter Parker, and Conway pays lip service to the Spider Sense by saying Warren saying, "Oh, Peter, he looks like he's shivering, like he's sensing something," but he just ignores it, and he just right there. I just think I'll stand right here in the middle of this yard, and I'll change into Spider-Man.
Yeah.
No. So, all right. So, and then of course, Miles Warren says, "Oh, now I hate him even more. I hate him twice over. I hate him 3,000." And so now he has to avenge Gwen. So he concocts the scheme where he injects his lab assistant Anthony Serba with Peter Parker's DNA and kidnaps Joyce Delaney and turns her into Gwen Stacy. But his awesome plan to destroy Spider-Man by Amazing Spider-Man issue number 149 fails. He can always activate the Carrion scenario.
Okay.
All right. And there you have it, boys and girls. The truth about Miles Warren's cloning experiment.
Matt says this has the editorial mandate written all over it.
Well, no, actually, I tell you what, I thought about that. I think Jerry Conway, the editorial mandate comes in Clone Saga too. I think Jerry Conway, as he's writing this, realizes it's the 1980s now, and he realizes that cloning doesn't quite work the way we thought it, But if you watch in the 1970s, when Conway first wrote the Clone Saga, cloning was like a big science fiction rage. I mean, it was we were starting to learn how to do it, and so all these horror stories about human cloning were Clonus the part. I don't know if Clonus was made yet. That's one of the all-time bad movies, but I just remember a bunch of cloning horror movies and stuff. Yeah. So it was pretty typical. Come a few years later, you realize that you just can't clone a human being. I mean, it's it's far beyond the means of a college professor. So I think Conway just kind of retconned, his own stuff a little bit just to reflect scientific thought. But then again, go ahead.
Real quick, this story is putting Mary Jane to sleep. She's tired.
Well, the thing is, she should have read closer because it probably gets juicier. All right. Yeah. So anyway, that's how it was until Clone Saga 2, when it was re-retconned to be that Warren really was truly cloning, and he was a pupil of the High Evolutionary. But the High Evolutionary didn't want his Animen to realize that true cloning was successful, so he faked Miles Warren's diary and put it in the lab to be found. So I can just imagine this, boys and girls. The High Evolutionary is in his office. His cloning experiments are all around him. He says, "Okay, I got this real problem here because I don't want anybody to know Miles Warren really cloned people. But he's got this journal, so what do I do? So I tell you what, I will write my own journal version of the events." So the High Evolutionary, so he's writing the journal, says, no, blah blah, and so he's writing to his, "I, Miles Warren, like Gwen Stacy. She was a daughter to me." And so one of High Evolutionary's assistants goes, "No, that's just dull. Yeah. Right, that he lusted after her. No, that's just creepy. Oh, come on, it'll be a lot of fun." The High Evolutionary goes, "Yeah, you're right. I'm going to go all out on this one. Might as well enjoy myself." And one day in class, Glenn showed up without a bra, and the air conditioning was on, and I could see her. Oh, anyway. So Peter's going, why? So Peter says, "Oh, I've gasped. I've got to go back, and I got to find out who Carrion was." So he goes back to the old lab and gasp, "There's Carrion!" All right. And Carrion hits him with the red dust and knocks him out and takes him to the cemetery where the Stacys are buried, where 31 years later, Kindred is going to go back and dig him up. But then wait a minute. Did Kindred dig him up first, or did Ben Reilly dig him up for the clone conspiracy first? I don't remember. George, you remember?
Who cares?
Anyway, so Carrion explains that he's the product of Warren's replicator virus, which he designed from his own DNA to ensure that there would be an alternative plan to avenge the death of Gwen
He
Stacy.
starts whooping on Spider-Man. Look at that Sal
Yeah, he
Buscema.
So, but then again, Carrion doesn't realize that Miles Warren is dead. And so Spidey figures he'll shake some sense into him, and he tricks Carrion into following him to Miles Warren's grave, because all of Spider-Man's supporting characters who die throughout the course of the series are buried in the same cemetery. So Carrion kicks Spider-Man into a grave. It turns out to be Miles Warren's grave. Carrion wasn't prepared to learn that Miles Warren was truly dead, so Spider-Man is able to use that as an edge to get the drop on him and defeat him. All right. And he figures, well, I'll just go drop this guy off at the vault. Oh, but as it turns out, Gwen Stacy's tombstone is right here. Well, so I'll go and say, Gwen, Mary Jane was right. I finally got to put the past behind me. So as much as I loved you, Gwen, this is finally
Not the end.
the end.
No.
And it says the end. It's the end. It's the end. The clone stuff will never happen again. Conway has put the finale, the kaboosh, the kibosh, the stake through the heart of the Clone Saga. No more clones until Clone Saga 2, until Clone Conspiracy, until 38 or 26 or 28 Ben Rileys or whatever later.
And we have a Miles Morales Clone Saga coming up too.
That's right.
This is very important, Brad. Don't move off this panel.
Okay, I'm ready.
This is very important. This is a PSA for all of you aspiring writers out there, for all of you amateur writers out there, for those of you learning the craft of writing. Look where it's the narrative box where it says the end. You see those 3 dots?
Yeah, right there.
Does anyone know what those 3 dots are called?
Ellipses.
That's an ellipses. An ellipses is 3 dots, not 7, not 9,
Yep.
not 2, not 4 or 5. It is 3 dots.
Yep.
I'm sorry. I return you to your regularly scheduled program. That's one of the biggest things that triggers me when I'm reading somebody else's stuff. Is like they'll have like more than 3 ellipses, and I'm like, what the hell?
JR, and comment, you got one of the nicest compliments from Andre. He goes, JR, the living tribunal.
I do my best. It's a tough and I recognize the awesome responsibility that I have to bring you Spider history, but and it's, trust me, it's a responsibility that I shall never shirk.
Yeah.
So.
Hornacek says, when the Jackal knocks Spidey out in ASM 148, without his Spider Sense warning him, doesn't he say, your Spider Sense only warns you of threats and I'm a friend?
That's what he says.
Yeah.
That's what he says.
But it doesn't make sense. Yeah.
No, but but then again, earlier, a few issues earlier, Aunt May cracked him over the head with a vase because in Dr. Octopus's townhouse, because after all, it only warns him of threats, not his dear old Aunt May. So
Matt says corpses.
The Spider Sense has been from day one, has never been pinned down accurately.
The writer uses the Spider Sense the way they want it to. Matt says corpses get dug up way too often in this series. There should be a law. That's not going to stop these bad guys from getting a shovel, Matt. Hornacek says, not just buried in the same cemetery, but all buried next to each other. How convenient.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And we never heard from Gwen Stacy ever again.
Nope.
Until Terry Kavanaugh. And then George, they start doing ellipsis jokes for you. Oh, look at all these ellipses. 7 ellipses, 5 ellipses. I hate you all like herpes, says George.
Why do you people want to antagonize our good friend George?
I'm sorry, George. I've used too many dots in this chat several times tonight. There you go. And Donnie D. All right. We've got about 10 minutes before the next show. If you guys want to chat us up.
Wow. I got through this and well, of course it helped that each story was only a 1-parter.
That is very true.
Which is why I did that deliberately, because I knew that starting in April, the demands were going to get more intense, and the time requirement was going to get more intense. And so therefore I picked some easy issues this month.
There you go. And tell them what you're going to do over the next several months with Spider History. We're starting it in May.
We're starting it next month, bro.
Oh, I'm sorry, Hornacek. I did not ask JR. Was this a good month? I always ask you that before I wrap up the episode. Was this a good month?
It was an okay month. It had, it had a little, okay Christmas story in ASM, and it had, Peter David social justice warrior story, which was okay. It's not as nearly as ham-fisted as some of JMD Mateus's stuff, I don't know. I mean, to be honest, the carrying nonsense got way out of hand. I mean, it's one of those things that, you know what, maybe we just didn't need an explanation for any of this stuff.
Yeah.
Because Carrion keeps showing up later and later, and he's less effective. He's one of those villains that was super effective the first time. It was when he was a desiccated clone of Miles Warren originally in the spectacular Spider-Man run back in the 20s and 30s. He was a scary, creepy, effective villain, and every time he's been used since, he's gotten worse.
I think the Clone Saga 2 just ruined him. I mean, there wasn't much. Yeah.
Well, I mean, this whole retcon, really, Conway should never have retconned it in the first place, because ultimately it got re-retconned in Clone Saga 2, which, regardless of Clone Saga's 2 faults, which are legion, there was probably no need to retcon the original Clone Saga. Just leave it be.
Johnny says, any interest in the Busick series, The Marvels? I didn't order it. No. I know these two didn't.
I'm not sure what has he got to say. I mean, it's like what he said in Marvels. I mean, what has he got to say?
Well, I honestly don't know what that story is about. It doesn't have a good hook for me.
I've got no interest in it. I'm somebody who marginally enjoyed the first Marvels, I guess. I don't know.
JR Didymus wants to know, what did you think of the Tombstone storyline? You hate it. You hate that Robbie storyline.
Yeah, which is kind of funny, because I actually think what Nick Spencer is doing now with Robbie and Tombstone actually is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah.
Because I don't dislike Tombstone as a character. And I don't dislike the whole idea that he and Robbie have a rivalry that dates back to their early years. But when the Tombstone story originally unfolded, I just didn't understand it. For one, again, the trial of Joe Robinson just made no sense. You just sit there and read, and you said, this is, this could not happen. This would not happen under any circumstances, and it's like, I always go back, we'll buy absurdity in superheroes and supervillains and things like that, like I always say, the whole thing with the Sandman's consciousness being in a single grain of sand. Well, that's stupid. Mm-hmm. But then again, we accept the fact that he turns into sand. So, we're in for a penny. But when we talk about real people and real things and the way the real world works, and someone just decides to ignore all of that for sake of a plot, that's really, and that's why I felt the trial of Joe Robertson was a perfect example of. Plus, it just Tombstone's, Robbie's my friend. It was creepy, and I wasn't sure
that's what they were going for.
But it was like, was he implying that Tombstone was? I mean, that's the thing. Was he implying that Tombstone was gay? That he had. I mean, and
where the hell would you get that from?
I didn't get that. I thought it was just him being a gangster, being creepy. Like, this is my buddy.
Like when Robbie stabs him in Appalachia. Robbie, why did you do that? I thought we were friends. I mean, it's like, no,
you didn't like it.
No, I mean, it doesn't make any sense.
You actually hear it in your head like that too? in those voices, because if so, then I would.
Then we understand. Yeah. Hearing wants to know, when was the last time we seen Sandman? Because I can't remember when we last saw him.
We saw him last month in Marvel Team Up number 40.
That was 75. When did we last see Sandman?
Yeah, 1975.
Wasn't there an annual recently?
Well, boy, I'm trying to remember. Peter David did a kind of a quasi origin story around the whole Civil War time about 12 years ago, but I know Sandman's appeared since then. Yeah, he appeared Slott because Slott used him because we found out that Sandman didn't have any baby making parts, which is like, okay, how does Spider-Man know that? Did he peek?
I think during Slott, I think so. Like what, 4 years ago or so? No, Jeff is very excited to see JR tackle Maximum Carnage in May for Spider History. Tell him what we're doing over the next couple months, JR.
Oh, man,
Maximum Carnage.
Here is the plan. Plan. All right. In April, the plan is to do the first 5 parts of Maximum Carnage. In May, next 4.
No. You're starting in May. We just did April now. May is. Oh, never mind. You're right. I'm sorry. I'm off. May is first part of Maximum Carnage.
Yeah, May is the first part. Yeah. Then June and July will also be Maximum Carnage. And then August and September will be The Child Within.
Oh, there you go.
It's going to be a great summer for Spider history.
People have asked you for years.
You can see George's excitement.
People have asked JR for years to do Maximum Carnage and The Child Within, and the fans literally have demanded it, JR.
And because, unlike Tyson, I like you people.
Oh, my God.
So I'm willing to give you what you want.
Good God. We got 4 minutes for the next show. I'll get through these comments quick. The creation of the new Carrion in this issue almost seems like an afterthought, like Conway got 2/3 of the way through the story and realized, whoops, there's no fight in this issue. Let's see.
I forget what was in issue number 150 of Spectacular.
Maybe the editor realized it.
Yeah. The story leads to the Tombstone and Robbie break out of prison, go on the run story, which is hilarious and how crazy it is.
Yeah, it was. It was a crazy story. Yeah.
Andre said, would Spencer be recycling and repackaging everything before that came before him in order to make all those stories more likable? Is he making an homage to Spider-Man's most controversial tales? Is it lazy writing from Spencer? I don't think so.
Oh, hell no, it's not lazy writing.
No, I mean, go ahead.
No, Spencer is like, he's touching on things that have happened in the past. That's fair game. That's expected, for past events to find their way to be relevant again. But at the same time, he's not like rehashing whole subplots the way Kurt Busiek did in his Avengers run, where basically he just lifted a whole bunch of stuff from what had gone on before.
Gary, in the Frozen, a Chip Zdarsky spec, I think it was a Zdarsky spec annual that last saw Sandman. Yeah, Gary, I think you're right. Hornacek says JR's plans for the summer, it will be called the Summer of Suck.
And another thing about what I just said about Spencer and how he's not recycling anything. Because as of right now, like all the stuff he's done with like Janice and Randy, Robbie and Tombstone haven't even seen each other in all this. I think we're about to, but I'm still of the opinion that Janice is probably going to get pregnant, and that's going to kick that all up way, way, way up. Because now you've got 2 enemies who are suddenly like
they're in-laws. Yeah,
we're in-laws. Suddenly, what does Tombstone do? Does he kill the father of his grandkid? Yeah. To get back at Robbie. It's going to be interesting, and that to me is fresh. It's not something that happened back when the past animosity between these two was covered. It's moving forward. It's progressed. It's not.
Didymus wants to know what was the end result of the Robbie trial. What happened, real quick?
Robbie was acquitted.
He went to prison, but I guess he was because when they got out of prison, when they escaped, his Bruiser, because Robbie befriended another convict by the name of Bruiser who protected him for a while. And then Bruiser got killed by Tombstone and his goons. And then when Robbie when they went back to court, Bruiser's brother, who was a lawyer, then defended Robbie, I believe.
I think he went to jail, and then I think within 8 or 10 issues, he'd already been cleared and free.
All right, last comment for the show. Hornacek says if Janice gets pregnant, then Tombstone goes after Randy for a shotgun wedding.
I can see.
I could totally see that too. That's pretty good. All right, thanks for watching. We will be back in just a little bit to do the May Spider History Maximum Carnage. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll be right back.